Hi, my name is Joshua James, and I have some C# code. I'm using a program or application called Selenium to test a website that allows me to do it automated. That way I don't have to test manually. So I'll go ahead and bring up the website that we want to test. It's this website that we used for customers to write down reports based on your database. This is the development, and we also have a QA side of it for testing methods. So for example, with Selenium, I would want to test like if this link is clickable and if it opens up the correct web page, or if I can log in, or if this password is not plain text and hidden away, and other features that we want to test. We actually have a test plan that we use to go through each website and different elements of the website and pages that need to be correctly displayed and are function properly. So that's the test plan, and as you can see, anything that I wrote down in C# using Selenium, I have been writing down auto, so I know I completed the code for it. So that's as far as it would go. And the C# exit out of that. So this is a website, and here's all the test IDs that equate to the test plan that we just saw. It's like, for example is working URL. It's going to read from a file and get the data URL. It's being separated by the equals sign. So I'll open up real quick. Each one of these is separated by the equals. So that's how it splits what information it wants. Console write, what test it's doing. Two different URLs, as I showed, the QA and the development. If once it obtains the URL from this string, which is grabbing the URL the web page is on, if it equals either one of these, then the test will pass. And we can see the string comparison down here. So it has to equal the development of a QA one, and then it will pass, else it will fail. I'll go to a different test. Kind of show kind of the same parameters of a different test. Same thing, we have a data file that's reading from, same data file actually, and once it's logged in, it needs to contain some of the text, such as welcome message, the username of whatever user I'm using, and then also a database. And then it counts that true or false, and if it's true for each one of those different strings, then it would pass the test, else it would fail. And that's basically how I wrote down each test for different items. Here's another one example, is here's the console log to a test. And I am eventually going to write it all to a file. I just haven't commented out because I haven't finished that code yet. And we can see if it clicks that this button, if it clicks it, it should go to this URL. It obtains the URL, and that should match one of these two. If it matches, it passes. If it doesn't match, it fails. We go to a more complex one. Here we have a search. So same thing. It's console login, console write line, the test that it's doing. This one, we're writing an array, or checking the length of a pre-existing array. It's going to continue this while loop until I is greater than that length, or breaks the length of that array. And it's going to check for each one of these machine names by sending the keys of an existing array from a prior test. And if that element contains it, then it's going to write down it, click it, and it's going to go to this method. And if it contains the element, it's going to count it. If it doesn't contain the element, it will count this test 305 plus the counter. If it doesn't contain it, it will just do the increment to I, and eventually breaks the while loop. And each one of those has to be positive. So test 305 has to equal the length of the array. If it doesn't, that means there is at least one negative, and then it will fail the test. So that's basically some of the test concepts I have. This one's not finished yet, so I actually have it commented out. Here's another test. It's a further copyright date. It's actually calling back to it's a redundant test that's calling back to this test 106. The z value is actually increased the second time. So here it's performing the console write line. It's going to look for this element, further. If a further contains the copyright and the year, which is being done right here, it's gathering the current year by the date time now, and if it doesn't contain that, then it's going to fail, which it actually will fail because we don't have a year assigned to the copyright date yet. So that test actually is going to fail with current conditions. Okay, so let me go back to the main class, and here I have some hidden codes for that, and this is my main method, so it's calling all the classes, and test 311 is unfinished, so I have it commented out, and it gives you, I'm writing to a file but it's not yet completed, so here it writes to a file called automation test is completed. Checks for internet. And I have option to use a static file, so it's going to check to see if a static file exists, and it's going to ask what driver is being used, Chrome, IE11, Firefox, or Edge. It's going to check to see if you have, with Edge it needs this DISM online capability driver. If it doesn't have it, it's going to install on demand. Then that way you can use Edge. Without this, with Windows 1809 or higher, Edge will not work with Selenium. So that is a required function. So if a user doesn't have it installed, it will go ahead and install it, and then it will exit that. Okay. Here we have some data validation checks. Login key, that basically logs in the user to the website, so reading from the file that's created. Console logs it. If it doesn't get to this URL, then it knows that it never logged in. Okay. If it does, then it knows it passed. This is for user input if I was to create a configuration file. It will ask me a series of questions that it wants to write to that file to be used to log in. These are some switches that we'll see when we run the console window. Asking if I want to use a dev or QA server, or if I want to exit. Some more switches to ask a series of different questions. What driver or what browser I want to use. This isn't currently being used. This is some code I want to add in later. If I do type in the wrong information, I can retry it. This is an encrypt and decrypt method to decrypt a password that's encrypted, and then encrypt a password that is decrypted, or plain text. And that's the main page. So let me go back up to the top and run the code. So here's the console window, and it checks for internet connection as we saw. And if I actually disable that, so now I have no network connection. I'm going to exit the test. And now my prereq for having an internet connection fails and exits the whole test series. So that is one of the prereqs I have. If you don't have an internet connection, you can't test the website, obviously. Okay, so let me re-enable the network. Wait for that to enable. Okay, now we should be able to get past that point. And we see we did. Now it's going to ask me if I want to create a file or if I want to use a static file. So I'm going to actually try to use a static one, and it's going to give me a message. Hey, you don't have such file on the desktop. And it's looking for this. This is my name. This is a variable. So if I was on a different PC, the PC, it would gather the PC name, and then it would go to the desktop. And right now I have it as a static path, so it has to be on the desktop. I could change that in the future. But since I don't have that configuration file, it's going to prompt me to create one. And as we can see, the options are now only two options, exit or create. And I can type in like a 5 or whatever, and it's going to know, hey, that's invalid data. So let me go ahead and create one with CLI. Okay, the database I want to use, my username, my password, and I can select the server I want to use. I'll go ahead and select the QA server for testing, and at this point I can actually select the browser I want to use too. I'll use Chrome. I like it the best. Okay, so now it's going to actually run through all those test codes of my Windows. So let's open the link on a different monitor. Oh, it's actually this guy. So it's running through each one of those tests, and it's know if it's a pass or fail based on some of those conditions I have. Most are string comparisons. Okay, right now it's going to check the further position. It's going to change the window resolution size, and as you can kind of see, the further position didn't stay sticky to the bottom, so that's actually failed right now. Okay, it's going to check the links on the footer. Okay, so now it's actually logged in, but it's going to recheck all the links to make sure the links are still working once it's actually logged into a database. I didn't rewrite the code, I just, for this redundant test, it's going back to a pre-existing code of the classes. This sign out test right now, I need to rewrite the code because right now it's signed out, but the test is going to fail because of this issue with my code. And as you can see, it failed, which it should have passed. Okay, right now we're going to the parent website, and this is going to gather information of the database to type into the search fields. So we're going to write an array. Here's my array with partial names using a substring method, I think of 3 characters. Okay, so right now we're typing in the information we gathered from the parent website to see if it has searches. The text A is used just to bring up a lot of results, so it's at least 10 results. And we're filtering the results. It's kind of getting cut off. Let me move it over. We're filtering results to bring up the full machine name. And each one of these should be positive because we gathered the machine name from the parent website database. So if it was negative, then the test would fail. Then we can see a negative test where we typed in nonsense, and that passes. That where it would say no matching records found. This is a series of negative tests. Okay, so the negative test passed. This test, next couple tests kind of go a little fast, but it's basically writing an array of the plant name, area name, machine, and action columns on these series of tests, and it's comparing if the array was A to Z or Z to A by writing two different arrays and then comparing the arrays together and then sorts them. If there's no change after the sort, then it knows if it was already alphabetical or if it was a descending list. And I can actually, I have a little bit of the console log. So here's the original array, and here's the sorted array. And since it's the same, that test is passed. And that's the end of the automation. So we can kind of see that happen here also. This array matches this array, so we know it's also passed. That means it was already an ascendant A to Z list, and there was no change after it was sorted, so that tells us, hey, the list was already alphabeticalized. And that did that for the area name. We actually parsed it. So then we can exit this. We actually get, here's the configuration file we used. And my password is encrypted, but when we log into a website, it decrypts to not plain text, but hidden regular text, and I can log in. Now, if I actually used a plain text password here, it would not. It checks to see if it's already encrypted or not. So then it will still work if I had a plain text password. And we have a results I have yet to finish, but here's the main. File config.cs. This is right into the file, but eventually I'm going to put all the test IDs in here too. That is it.